Welcome back, everyone, for a new price charting list, or as I'm now calling this series, game charting. So, with that said, we're doing a second look through of some other specific home consoles as well as handhelds. And this is looking at information from the website pricecharting.com. So, with that said, this will be specifically just 10 total, no honorable mentions because it's not top 10. And in the future, sometime, maybe several months from now, I may do another one with some I mentioned in one of my previous videos, mixed with some I haven't done before. But with that said, choice in the background in this video of music, I chose to go with the soundtrack of, in my opinion, criminally underrated game called Tekken 4 for the PS2. So with that said, first one looking at today is the PSP, and specifically the 3000 model, which was the last of the three models, excluding the PSP Go, of course. So, with that said, as of January 2021, sales numbers for the PSP 3000 model was on average trending for around 9150, which is kind of understandable why it'd be around that range. Now, going forward, looking at January this year, it has actually dropped to $85, so a several dollar jump. Now, if you're curious in getting one of these brand new, factory sealed, you're looking on average around $450. Should expect that. Now, as for me, what do I think moving forward for the PSP 3000? I think it's going to relatively level out. I don't see a huge spike nor a huge drop. I think it's going to stay relatively consistent overall. I don't see it jumping above 100, nor do I see it dropping majorly. There's a pretty persistent and loyal fan base to the PSP, speaking as one myself. But it is interesting the fact it sold 80 million units, yet surprisingly, I don't see a huge amount of major YouTubers actually talk about the PSP. And because that alone is why I think the prices will stay consistent, pretty even, and not skyrocket, because so many bigger YouTubers do not talk about the specific handheld. And that is to the advantage of collectors, in my opinion. There are many great Capcom games on the PSP, Namco, and there's also a great plethora of Square Enix games. Now, next, we're looking at a all-time classic. One of my personal friends and co-workers is a big fan and a collector of this console himself, and that is the Atari 2600. Now, personally, I don't have one. I would eventually like to get my hands on at least some Atari console, though I'd probably be more interested in the 7800 or possibly the maybe Jaguar, though that's getting a little out of control. But the 2600 is relatively very affordable. It's not a super high in demand. Really, none of the vintage consoles are. But as of January of last year, the average trending price was $60, which is very reasonable. And believe it or not, this year I looked and the trending price for the console was averaging around like the low to mid $30 range. So yeah, it dropped by nearly half. I do think it's going to go back up a little, but I don't see it spiking back up majorly, and there's not a huge demand for the 2600, especially when you have the 7800 out there, which is backwards compatible with the 2600 games. So because of that alone, and I don't see a humongous amount of big collectors of Atari 2600, other than the people who actually grew up and have nostalgia for the 2600. So, outside of that, I actually think this is a probably out of the ones looking at. It's probably one of the best to look at possibly collecting if you're interested. Now, keep in mind these prices are for the original Model 1 with the wood paneling. This is not the secondary version called the Atari Junior. Next up, we're looking at the Gameboy Advance, and we're looking at the base model, not the SP model. Uh, which trending and quickly the 2600 brand new sealed. Surprisingly, you can find one for about $294. Surprisingly cheaper than I would have expected given how old it is. But the Game Boy Advance, you're looking at last year, January, it was hovering around $52, which is still reasonable. And this year, last time I checked for the end of January, it was hovering around $68. So it actually increased by about $16 since last year. It's quite a pretty good jump. And I think that's because a lot of people are wanting nostalgia factor and stuff now with the Game Boy Advance. Though the SP is the more high in demand one, given it's rechargeable, has a backlit screen. Those are the advantages. But there are probably some people that have an interest in original GBA. But with that said, where do I see it moving forward, the Game Boy Advance? I think it's going to stay relatively steady and may go up a little more, but I don't see it skyrocketing like it did over the past year, nor do I see it dropping majorly. So I think it's going to stay relatively consistent as well. Now, if you're wanting one or interested in new, you're looking at, on average right now, $514. So good luck on that. Also, next is one of the more nutty ones, and that is a console that humongously skyrocketed over the last year, and I don't know why. Except I know a lot of bigger YouTubers have done many videos on this console, specifically individuals like Angry Video Game Nerd, GameSack, back in the past Classic Game Room did a lot of stuff on that, as well as many other YouTubers. So, and also recently, Matt McMuscles not too long ago did a video on games and stuff involving this. Next, looking at the Philips CDI, arguably probably one of the worst home consoles to be released in the 90s, though it is definitely a very much collector's item, but for a long time it was a very affordable console to collect, the actual console itself. The games are insanely overpriced. But on average, last year, January, you could find Philips CDI on average, depending on the model, however. You could find at around $84. Sounds very affordable, right? And then, looking at the end of January this year, the price for the Philips CDI is $452. That means it jumped up like about $370 in 1 year. That's just mind-boggling in my opinion. That's insane skyrocket. And given what it's looking like right now for February, I actually think it may go up more. Though I think then probably a few months from now it may start going down like a roller coaster. Hard to say. It depends how things go moving forward and what more attention the Philips CDI may actually get. Now, if you're looking for one new, you're looking at $950. Next up, looking at the original Nintendo, the original classic NES. January of last year, it was hovering around $49. And keep in mind, this is the Model 1, not the Model 2. As of this year, on average, it's trading for about $50, so it's gone up $1. On the overall trending, I think it's going to stay relatively steady, definitely looking at the numbers and everything. I don't see it really changing anytime soon, personally. Also, if you're interested in one new, you're looking about $810. It's not surprised if it is Nintendo. Next up, speaking of some I mentioned before, the Atari Jaguar. Now, this is one in more recent time has really started going up and becoming very much a bigger collector's item because of it being a failure when it came out. But January of last year, and this is the Atari Jaguar, by the way. This is the base, the regular model. Last year, it was hovering around $296, so as you can see, pretty pricey. And this year, past January, it's hovering around $376. So it's gone up quite a bit of money. Now, if you are curious, new it's running for right now about $577. Now, what do I think moving forward? I'm honestly not 100% certain what's going to happen. It could go up more or it could stay steady. Honestly, I have no idea how to predict the Jaguar. Next up is one I'm pretty sure will go up, at least slowly. I don't think skyrocket, but I do see it going up. We're looking next at a handheld called the Geo Pocket Color. Just as an example, the Geo Pocket Color, arguably one of the greatest handhelds, far ahead of its time overall, in my opinion. But with that said, how do I think things are going to move forward with the Geo Pocket Color? Honestly, well, as of last year, it was teetering around $97. Now, keep in mind, that is loose, that's not in box complete. January, at the end of this year, it was hovering around 100 even, so it went up about $3. So not much. How do I think it's going to move forward? I do think it is going to continue going up. Slow. I think it's going to be a relatively steady going up. I don't think it's going to be like a skyrocket all of a sudden, like some of the other consoles. Because the Geo Pocket Color actually, given when it came out, it actually was relatively okay. Out of flops, it wasn't like a million or less units sold. It sold, like, involving Japan and worldwide, it sold actually around 5 million units. So it was by far in the 90s probably the third best-selling handheld, or the second best-selling outside of Nintendo. And, of course, right behind the Game Gear. But with that said, yeah, the Pocket Color, I do think it's going up. Now, if you're curious about one of them in new, you're looking at about $253. It's still relatively affordable. Okay, not really affordable, but compared to a lot of the other stuff, it is way closer. Looking next is another one which has gone up quite a decent amount over the past year. It's gone up over $40. So a pretty decent hike. January of last year, and talking about the TurboGrafx 16, which was a console that actually did better than I realized. It definitely had some iconic games, as well as it was the only console to have the original classic Street Fighter game that was called Fighting Street because of copyright issues at the time. But it was hovering about $167 January of last year. This year, January, it was hovering around $210. So yeah, a decent increase. Now, if you're interested in one new, you're looking at about $718. Pretty hefty price. And I think the TurboGrafx is going to stay, I think, somewhat steady or go a little bit slower increase moving forward. I don't think it's going to be another skyrocket spike in prices, though I could be wrong. Coming at number 2 is arguably one of the most unique consoles of all time. It was released in the 1980s. It sold probably a little less than 2 million units worldwide. It was the only console with an actual built-in screen, and it was the only vector graphics-based console ever made and released. It is called the Vectrex. I've mentioned it before. It is a criminally underrated console. I have never owned one. I would love to get my hands on one, though it has always been relatively pricey. And good luck finding one in good condition for a reasonable price. Now, I've been lucky at retro conventions or anime conventions I've attended. I've gotten to actually try them out. So I consider myself lucky in that aspect, that at least I've actually gotten to play a Vectrex. With that said, last year it was hovering around $350 in total price. This year, it's, as of the end of January, it was hovering about $414, so that is a hefty spike to say the least. A $64 spike. Now, if you're wanting one new, easily one of the most expensive things, and plus good luck finding one, It's going for about $1,790 nude in box. Last talk about some which has sold worldwide, or at least in North America, only sold about 5,000 copies. It is a pretty rare special device developed and released by Sega. It is a combination Sega CD and Sega Genesis combined into one smaller unit, and pretty rare to find for a reasonable price range. I am happy to say several years back I looked out at a retro convention. I managed to find one for a reasonable price range. Though to be fair, that's because it at the time, like, the disc part was not playing discs. Luckily, I knew somebody that actually knows how to repair retro consoles, thank goodness. But because of that, I saved a lot doing that. So, with that said, and it's called the Sega Cdx. Now, as of the end of last year, or rather, last year in the end of January, it was hovering around $394. This year, right now, it's hovering around $432, so it has jumped up a decent amount. Moving forward, I think this is actually going to be one that's going to be a bit harder to predict. I'm kind of 50-50 on it. On one hand, I could see it maybe going down, and on the other hand, I could see it also just staying relatively even. I don't think it's going to see another spike. Then again, I could be wrong, but a lot of times, a lot of Sega stuff, outside specific stuff, usually, like the Genesis has stayed relatively consistent, though the CDX being a lot more rare could mean otherwise. Now, also, if you're curious about one brand new factory sealed in box, you're looking at $2,750. So, yeah, ridiculous to say the least, an insane price. But with that said, that is looking at 10 more consoles, home consoles slash handhelds, trying to predict where they go and seeing how the prices are from 1 year to the next year. And like I said, I'll probably do another one of these involving consoles, handhelds, probably wait a few months, probably around maybe May or June. I may do a new one on consoles. I am working, however, on a new future price charting or game price charting one for specific games. I'm going to be looking at PS2 fighting games. I will be just at random. I selected games. Some are very affordable. Some have really gone up. It's very unpredictable when it comes down to it on specific genres and consoles. So with that said, I'll see y'all next time. Same YouTube time, same YouTube channel. Please give a thumbs up, like, subscribe, leave a comment. Tell me, do you have any of these specific consoles? And if you do or you don't, are there any specifically you're surprised by the prices on? But with that said, I'll see y'all next time, and hopefully enjoyed the Tekken 4 music in the background. But see you again, and right now, all prayers and hopes go with the people of Ukraine. And I really hope the US and the EU stand up and back the Ukraine. But I'll see y'all next time. Keep them in your thoughts. See you again soon.